All
right. Wow, what a wild week.
Right? Yeah, wild week, huh? We're back up. We've been down. We've been up. We've been down. Right? We're back to we're up above November highs again, right? That's at least a good thing. You there, Stephen? Oh, did I lose you?
Back in November, I started fitting exponential growth curves to just the price of Bitcoin in terms of US dollars.
Okay.
Under the premise that, it's a network effect adoption sort of scenario. Demand is going to be increasing exponentially for the early part of the S curve. And if supply and demand is, what it seems to be, which is sort of price is a pure expression of supply and demand because there's not an underlying commodity or any other pressures besides news and whatnot on price determination. And with a limited number of coins, it should follow an exponential growth curve in the price as well. So anyway, at least approximately. It fit pretty well, and it predicted, hitting 14,000 by the end of December. So we're well above what that model fit was showing, which shows we're a little above exponential,
right?
Unless it hasn't fully corrected yet.
Sure. Well, that's possible. I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens as we turn over the new year and sort of everybody gets back to the traditional whatever they're doing on their regular day-to-day and sort of watches this thing and starts to dig into it. I just hope that they can filter through some of the news.
Yeah. So shall we talk about some news?
Yeah, let's do it. There's plenty out there for sure. I've started paying a little bit more attention to the Bitcoin and the BTC Reddits, just because it's always good to kind of tune into the dialogue a little bit sometimes. But it is interesting how much it's very much part of the dialogue there is all of this these news articles that are not very well founded or obviously biased and lots of exclamations against Bitcoin or against cryptocurrencies, but ultimately I haven't really heard an argument, at least not from a lot of the news, that's valid against Bitcoin that's not valid against money. Or at least the money that we use in the way we know of our dollars today. So it's a little bit tiring. Like we're kind of acting like we always have to be defending it, but it really doesn't need to be. So people do get educated.
I had some interesting stuff cross my email inbox today on that topic. And one was an article by somebody who's in financial services of some sort. Mm-hmm. So obviously an industry that's being disrupted dramatically by cryptos. So it starts with the first sentence. I'll read it here. I think I have it in front of me here.
Yeah.
First sentence of the article is, everyone says the blockchain, the technology underpinning cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin is going to change everything. And yet, after years of tireless effort and billions of dollars invested, nobody has actually come up with a use for the blockchain besides currency speculation and illegal transactions. And then it goes on for 4 or 5 pages.
Is ledgers the solution to illegal transactions?
Well, exactly. My first reaction to a friend sent me this, and he said, you think about this stuff a lot. Answer these issues for me that this guy is raising. And I said, well, first thing is I can tell by the last 2 words of his first sentence that he's already got a point of view that is going to be anti-blockchain, anti-cryptocurrencies, no matter what, right? Because illegal transactions happen way more in cash, as we know, than on blockchain. And we should share a link to, there's actually a very interesting TED Talk I saw recently by a woman who was a federal agent who was involved in taking down the Silk Road. I'm going to post it in the live chat right now, not to compete with us. But she goes through the story of how using the open ledger technology and the ability to examine the transactions on the blockchain, they not only busted the Silk Road mastermind, I can't think of his name now, but at the same time he was being extorted by another anonymous character and being fed information about the U.S. investigation into him by a third anonymous character. And it turned out when they got the right-hand man to sing, basically, and they confiscated his computer and whatnot, suddenly, I don't remember, it was like 260, maybe it was, no, it was $26 million in Bitcoin in that day's value, was stolen from the ringleader of the Silk Road. And everyone assumed it was his right-hand man who took it because he had access to the accounts and it came off of his computer, and this money just disappeared. This Bitcoin disappeared. Well, then later on in the investigation, after this guy's, after Silk Road's been shut down and this dude is being extradited and prosecuted or whatever, they get an anonymous tip that somebody's spending that Bitcoin. So they went and they just dug through the ledger and they followed the money. And it turns out that they found 2 U.S. federal agents who were guilty of they were posing. One was posing as both of the anonymous characters who were in on this, what I described earlier. One was threatening and extorting the head of Silk Road, and the other one was being bribed to give him information about the U.S. investigation. That was the identity.
All the outcry is, oh no, it's for catching fraudsters. Stop, bad.
Right. And so the woman who gives this talk, and I forget her name. I think her last name is Han. I think Haun. She talks about how important a technology like this is for federal investigators and the FBI and anybody who's trying to combat money laundering and illegal transactions because of the trail of evidence it provides. It's an absolute opposite story that the news is so fond of purporting out there. And those of us who know what the technology is, of course, understand that already, but the people who are just coming on board get spooked by this. I get questions about it all the time.
Yeah, constantly. Yeah, I mean, people usually, can pretty quickly understand the analogy of like, well, money gets used for bad things. It's money, so it gets used for bad things. But it is hard to get over the threshold of recognizing that this is actually better for those things and more protective. That's not to say that this technology doesn't open up other doorways, but Bitcoin, as it stands, is certainly counter criminal, I think, in many ways. It's one of the beautiful things about an open public ledger. So let's see, what's another fun topic that comes up as a big oh no, bad cryptocurrencies, bad Bitcoin?
Well, maybe we should talk about some of the real blockchain examples that are actually happening, because this person who wrote this critical article was clearly ignorant of the fact that things are really happening.
Right.
Right. I'm curious. So I have some applications that have touched my life personally. I talked about one of them last week. But I'm wondering, Ryan, do you have anything to share, or any that are making a difference right now in the world?
Yeah, well, I know I constantly, I often bring up folding coin, but one that I've been looking at a little bit more lately that's related is grid coin, where grid coin actually associates the issuance of their cryptocurrency based on your participation in the BOINC network. I don't know if people actually say it that way, but it's BOINC. It's basically a distributed computing platform that allows people to fold proteins or search for prime numbers or really do any number of pretty complex calculations that are typically beneficial for the human condition. And Gridcoin essentially rewards any participation in that network. I haven't fully gotten through all of the details there, but similar to some of these other cryptocurrencies that are getting creative in how they utilize the proof of work algorithms, they're finding a way to make that work go towards ongoing efforts in research and scientific development. So Gridcoin I found is pretty interesting to me. I like that idea a lot of having that power go towards scientific research. But the concept of that ultimately is that value is created by people recognize the value of that research and then philanthropically or speculatively investing in that market and creating a value for that currency. And then the people get rewarded who hold it, merchants get rewarded who accept it, and it creates that ecosystem.
Sure. Yeah. So that reminded me of, at first I thought you might be talking about another one, Grid Plus, which is a consensus Ethereum
cool.
blockchain project. And that's a renewables energy trading thing. And it's already undergone a pilot project in Europe where they have connected a bunch of smart batteries.
Oh, yeah.
To demonstrate that they can do on blockchain trading of power through the grid and accounting for it. And it's not operational yet with actual renewables out in the world, but it's past that first gate of the demonstration. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, Propy is a property listing site, and they are launching a trial in California. It's a live. It's not a test network. If you buy or sell property on that, it'll be a real transaction. But their expectation is to be able to demonstrate 9-minute real estate transactions. So that was one of the things they were talking about. But Propy has actually met recently in Vermont with some prominent figures. And Vermont is showing themselves to be somewhat open to some of these innovators and looking at getting our land titles on the blockchain. So obviously, that brings up, no blockchain solutions. Just so he knows, most of the companies his stock, his clients' money is invested in, are invested in companies whose entities are recorded on a blockchain in the state of Delaware. Is where most publicly traded companies are, or many publicly traded companies are registered in the state of Delaware, formed in the state of Delaware, and they do keep track of all their business records on a blockchain. So, and that's been for a few years.
Yeah, and another practical application. I think you took University of Nicosia's DFIN 511, right?
Yes, I did. Yep.
And your credentials for completing that are going to be recorded on the blockchain. So
that's right.
You don't need a notary to sign it. You don't need to go through a bureaucratic process to have the administration move a transcript. You can just point anybody to that, and they can confirm that that you took that course, that credential. Even if
so essentially, you take the document or the credential that I might have, or show to anybody, and they can hash it, and it'll match a hash on the blockchain that's time and date stamped for when that was completed.
Right, and then there's others. I talked last week about CirclePay, and they started off being a Bitcoin company, but then they went to a consortium blockchain, basically, with their banking partners.
Yep.
And that's for international remittances. It settles instantaneously. It's amazing compared to what the baseline was. But I'm not going to talk about that again because I did it last week. There's some other things going on. ICOs themselves. Are direct result of blockchain, right? So that turned the whole crowdfunding.
Well, fundraising, venture capital investment models. Was it more ICO money was raised than venture capital money in this sector this year?
Yes. Yeah. I don't remember the exact
so that's like $3+ billion. That's significant, and so that's decentralized democratic fundraising. Doesn't have to be the big rich powers and capital holders that decide what projects get funded and which don't. It's really opening up that ability for people to participate on the smaller scale.
And that's what I like to point out.
You
don't need to be an institutional investor or an accredited investor to get in on the ground floor of a startup now with an ICO.
Right.
At least for now.
Exactly. Right.
And that used to be a club just reserved for people. You need money to make money, right? Now there's a lot of dogs out there. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of ICOs that are going to crash and burn in a pile of dust. But out of this is going to come the next Amazon, the next Google,
right?
Of the financial services sectors are going to arise from this.
I'm bummed that Roger couldn't make it, because I know we often talk about some kind of a coin offering way to fund rural development in Vermont in terms of getting high-speed internet out there. And the reality is that if you build something that's infrastructure based and you tokenize access to it, those tokens are going to have value. It might not go from a penny to $1 million like Bitcoin might, but it's still going to have value. So it's worth an investment, especially in a market where there's less and less returns in traditional lending markets and things like that. So for an investor to be able to look at something that might go 2, 3, 4, 5x, that's got value. But in addition to that, if you're looking at tokenizing public services, utilities, things like internet, there can again be that philanthropic side where interested parties like large companies that maybe want to have access to remote workers who want the lifestyle living in Vermont and need that kind of access might buy up those tokens to include in part of their employment packages or part of their relocation packages or any other manner of incentives to make the combination of lifestyle and work balance kind of happen. It's game changing, right? It's cutting out all the middlemen that currently sort of stick their finger in the pot and skim off the top.
Hey, just noticing we have a viewer.
Oh, good.
Who wrote in Unreal Patch and said, and Ukraine. So if you have any questions,
oh, cool.
Please throw them out there in the chat. All right, please share in chat.
Great.
We
do like viewers.
Should we talk more about what's going on in the in all of the exchanges and markets this last week? We had a little conversation before this about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. I'm going to pull up a coin market cap here, and we'll switch over to a little screen share because that's been a very active site. Oh, I see Mark on there. Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Fine. Hi, Mark.
All right. So screen share. There we go. All right. So here we are looking at the coin market cap. Zoom a little bit. And I always like to do this. Look at that, back over 600 billion. Just a little over $500 billion market, but not that big a deal. It's just for criminals and drug dealers, right?
On that, one more thing about that. Another thing that this whatever his name.
Besides, I'm anti-prohibition, anyways.
Yeah, another thing this Keist Income says is Mount Gox, right? He's like, oh, it's not, Bitcoin is not secure, cryptos are not secure. Mount Gox lost all this money. Making Mount Gox an argument against cryptocurrencies is like making
like a bank robbery from the 80s.
Yeah, it's like making John Dillinger an argument against banking. Or a specific bank robbery an argument against banking. It just, it doesn't even warrant discussion when you write it in those terms. Mount Gox was an unsecure startup that was for trading cards for Magic the Gathering. So it's a Magic the Gathering online exchange, right? Gamers know this game. And people were paying for them in Bitcoin, and they realized that people were more interested in trading the Bitcoin than the cards, and so their business model shifted. But they were not a financial services firm to begin with, and it was young amateurs who couldn't grow fast enough and implement the security they needed. And yeah, the thing got hacked, and people lost Bitcoin.
Right.
That is not what Bitcoin is about, or what any cryptos or blockchain technology is about. And I'm just tired of people citing Mt. Gox as an example why all this stuff is horrible and unsecure.
But I just think it's cool that we actually know about all of these different things that have happened in crypto, right? Like all of these insecure events, we're well aware of them, whereas we're not really aware of all of the things that have happened in our current financial systems.
Equifax gets hacked in July.
The CI does
until September.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know about what the CIA's been, paying for cocaine over the years, all this stuff. Like it's not on a ledger, at least not one that we have access to. So we can't even take pseudo-anonymous information and try to extrapolate, where our tax dollars are going. It goes into a black hole. All right, so we're looking at Bitcoin up there over 16,000. Oh man, I guess I haven't been paying attention for a few minutes. So up 14% on the day. Bitcoin makes a fairly hefty recovery over the past few days. It might still be in a bit of a bear market for a little while. It hit a top of 20,000. I mean, that's a big peak to hit. It definitely demonstrated that nice parabolic curve it likes to demonstrate. But as I was listening to somebody speak today, we're in the elbow. This is the innovation curve. And Bitcoin is still in anybody's mind, in my mind, the sort of poster child for cryptocurrency. And so as the world wakes up to this, because there's only a few million people paying attention right now, as the world wakes up to this, Bitcoin's going to be the first go-to. And it's not that others aren't going to pick up some of that capital flow. It's going to be that there's going to be people out there who are going to realize they lost a bunch in alts that aren't worth very much, and they jumped into some ICOs that aren't really doing anything, and all that sort of blowback that's going to happen over the next, I think 6 to 12 months is going to result in people sort of recoiling back to your core principled cryptocurrencies, your Bitcoin, your Litecoin. Maybe IOTA ends up having some merit. Dash seems to have a strong community around it that's really dedicated. Who knows? But interesting to watch and see how these things play out.
Yeah, and on the topic of that innovation curve, I want to share a resource with people. I found a really excellent video about a week ago on YouTube, and it's if people search for it, it's Bitcoin 101 - why Bitcoin's growth is normal and the S curves you could never see. I'm not quite sure about that title, but it's a guy who I'm trying to remember his name now, Anthony something, and he's a lecturer at Harvard School of Government, Kennedy School of Government, and he's got a channel that explains some things pretty well. And particularly the S-curve thing, and he kind of compares it to other S-curves in the past that we've seen in terms of growth of phenomena, and explains why the network effect is so critical to take into account for these growth patterns. But anyway, moving back to what was going on.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a key point, right? We're watching this sort of ebb and flow of the awareness, the interest, the engagement. You've got the news flow that sort of dampens things and pushes things back down again, and then people sort of learn to see through that. It's interesting to watch that that process unfold, and I think let's just take a.
Okay, so in general, what happened was we saw a pullback of a lot of altcoins, along with sort of the major currencies, right?
Right. Yep.
And they have not been as quick to recover.
Right. All of this, we see a lot of green here. I guess that's what I was going to get at here. Is we see a lot of green here. There's some reds, but there's a lot of green here. But the key is that when you're looking at everything based in dollars, your vision's blurred, right? And so every time I compare the value of any of these assets, I'm always comparing it to Bitcoin. What really matters, if you're going to jump into the risky cryptocurrency market, all you should really care about is the asset you're investing in going to go up in value faster than Bitcoin? Because if not, then you've created tax liability and stress, and really taken a lot of extra risk that's not necessary.
And when you may as well be in Bitcoin.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, so I noticed that
there's some risk there.
This morning I logged into my Poloniex account, and I it was set to viewing everything in USDT, which is US dollar tethers, which is it's another coin, but they try to peg it to the dollar somehow. Right. For people who don't know, everything was mildly green, single digits. I have like 6 of the top 25 coins in there. And then I flipped over to the view it in terms of Bitcoin. Everything was mildly red, down relative to Bitcoin. That's because of the rally that was happening, Bitcoin coming back from the lows over Christmas. But it'll keep going that way, because if you look at the charts, everything is ebbing and flowing on top of a steady downward decline relative to Bitcoin, and on top of a steady upward increase relative to US dollars. So anyway, to make your point. So Mark asked a question.
Perfect.
I shared something with Ryan that everyone may find interesting.
Oh yeah, actually, let's talk about, was it CoinHive?
He didn't type it what it was, but
okay. Well, I'll talk about CoinHive for a minute. So this is pretty cool, actually. CoinHive is a site where you can create a login And can you see this? Crypto miner?
Yep.
Okay. So you can create a login here and get a link. And basically, so to put it in the context of what Mark is doing, is Mark is the founder of OpenWords. And OpenWords is a language learning software platform. And so one of the challenges that they're running into is it's open source. And so they need more collaboration to get content in there. And they're trying not to charge students. They want to make it so that students can get to this open source software and learn languages, make it a real open educational resource. So one avenue that he found this, as we've been talking about a lot of things and Monero would come up, he discovered that CoinHive offers a miner that you can link with your website so that your customers could go to your website and opt to mine Monero with their processing power on your behalf while they browse your website. So it's a way for them to reward you without you putting up ads or something like that, or in addition to ads maybe. But they can just click, and I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to mine a little Monero for CoinHive directly here. Actually, you know what? I should let me fix this. I should go mine some Monero for Mark, because I've been doing that a little bit just for fun. And so I'll go in. I've got a link from Mark. Oh, just my luck. I'm going to have trouble finding it. Let me do Hive. And well, I hear it. I just heard my fan fire up. So it's actually running right now. And I believe, is this the right one? Is it my link? Yep, OpenWords. All right. And I'll shut off the other one in the background. So CoinHive. And now I am officially mining some Monero on behalf of openwords.com so that they can help fund content creators to create educational content to help teach anyone around the world that wants to learn a new language. So that's that's a great example of one of the really, blockchain technology and cryptography. I mean, it's complicated, but you know what? That was not complicated, right? That's a link.
No, it's getting easier, definitely.
Yeah, he can put a link on his website. Hey, help us out. Click here.
Speaking of easier, what do you think of the Exodus wallet? Have you used it?
I have not used Exodus. It's Windows only or PC only, right? Or desktop?
No,
only?
I'm running it on Mac. Can I show it here? I'll share.
Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
It's Roger showed me this during one of our Wednesday morning chats in Randolph.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember how to show my screen here. Settings.
Left side, there's a little green icon. Second one down on the left should be.
Easy to use wallet. It's connected to a decentralized exchange. Horrible with names. It'll come to me. Let me see. Screen. I'll have to edit this later.
Yeah.
It's not there. Where? Oh, right. I know. Yeah, it's a little green thing.
Oh, you know what? I am going to have to, sorry, Mark, I'm going to have to pause the miner because I think I'm starting to stutter too much here. But anyways, great for if you're just browsing or from just reading something, leaving that sit in the background. It's just an awesome way to support any kind of organization that's using that CoinHive. Okay,
so here's your Exodus screen. It's really simple. It's got shouldn't be sharing this stuff, but now oh darn it, I'm clicking the wrong thing. Sorry.
I'll edit that for you later too. Let's see if I can make that display somewhat. Lets you have a bunch of different assets, and also has shapeshift. Can you see that? Shapeshift and Changely integrated, and so that might be a way for, if you're using Exodus, you could use Coinomi to have access to the same wallet on an Android device. And it works with the, was it BIP39 derived private keys. So all of these different coins are all tied to one root private key. And then if you have forks, this is a great wallet if forks happen, because you can just take, if you look at the top there, you'll see Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold. And so I can take another wallet that maybe I wasn't using on this app, and I can load the private key from, say, my Mycelium wallet into Coinomi, enter in the derivation path, and load in a Bitcoin Cash wallet address from that. And poof, now I've got Bitcoin Cash in my Coinomi wallet, and I haven't really put anything at risk.
So Mark tried to share another link, and he just typed it in a way that YouTube wouldn't block it, and I pasted it to a text to you, Ryan.
Oh, awesome.
It's bail block.
Okay.
Bail block the new inquiry.com about HTML. It's he said it's another way to mine Monero. Another system that mines Monero is not connected to CoinHive. Well, while you're checking that out,
oh, I see. The new inquiry. Got it.
Maybe talk a little bit about what was in stockings in my house this Christmas.
Oh, yeah?
Which is
nice.
Ledger Nano. So Ledger Nano is a hardware wallet. And what this does is it stores your keys so this is where I enter my PIN, right? It's got two buttons on top here. And one will decrement the choice, one will increment the choice. And then I can click them both together to make a selection. And so if I enter my 8-digit PIN, I'm just entering a random number here because I can't even read it right now. But it'll unlock the app. I'll do that offline. And then it gives you use a Google Chrome plugin to load different coin apps on this to handle different coins. And so like last night, Bitcoin came on it by default, and Litecoin, I think, and Ethereum. And I loaded Neo on it, and there's a whole slew of others. It also has a two-factor authentication thing, kind of like your Google Authenticator for financial services that use FUD. That's a built-in app on it. So, and if you can't break the thing. If you screw up and get in the wrong state, you unplug it, you plug it back in, it powers on again.
Nice.
And you're good to go. So it's pretty easy to set up. My son did his in about an hour. I did mine in about an hour. And you have to write down your passphrase so you can recover it. You can also transfer your wallet from this to another device. So you can put a backup in a safe deposit box or in a strong box at home, or send it to your cool aunt in Hawaii to hold for you or whatever. And you can have a backup of the same wallet with all the same holdings in it. And then my son was telling me, as he read more into the documentation, there's sort of a deeper layer where you can have a secondary passcode that unlocks like your savings account. So if you get mugged and someone beats your passcode out of you, they only get into the outer layer wallet where maybe you have your traveling money in it or something. But if you have your life savings in the inner layer, and they don't know about it, and you don't give them the password, they don't get to there. And there's lots of online support. There's videos and stuff. And I had my choice of this or the Trezor. And I chose this because it seemed to support a larger variety of coins, and it was a little bit cheaper, and it was a smaller form factor. But it does have some differences. Trezor has a much more complicated PIN code entry where you can have it actually randomize a keypad so that not only do you have to enter your PIN anytime, but anybody who's watching doesn't know which buttons you're pressing, because it gives you a map of the keypad on the device and then a separate map without the numbers on your screen, which I thought was kind of a neat feature. Anyway, maybe we'll talk about Trezor later if we get one of those too.
Cool.
And I might post a video of a walkthrough how to set this thing up, because I didn't find many of the ones online, any of the freelance ones, to be particularly useful.
Sure. Cool. Well, so I do remember reading about Bail Block now. Yeah, Mark had sent me this link. And so Bail Block, let me share my screen, is basically an effort to help keep people out of jail. So what they're doing is they're allowing, there we go, is they're allowing volunteers to share their spare computer power to mine Monero for the purpose of funding bail for people who've been arrested. So this is connected with the Bronx Freedom Fund. And so 100% of the currency in your computer generates is used for the Bronx Freedom Fund. And what's kind of cool about this is that, you know, they're generating assets and, you know, bails are revolving. So, you know, in theory, they get 96% of the time they get the money back, and they can continue reusing this, can keep building a store of capital for them to use for this purpose. And this gets to, you know, this is really about how, yeah, you can get into all the details here if you read how bail works.
So
but
let's
ultimately, we're
just
trying
talk
to
about
combat mass incarceration. Is
right. We're not bailing out Bernie Madoff here. This is
right.
about mass incarceration, which largely affects poor people, minorities, mostly Black.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's a
Here we go. Prosecutors and judges work in concert to coerce low-income people to accept plea deals in exchange for their release. It makes their stats look great. In New York, 90% of people who can't pay bail end up pleading guilty. So their idea is to try to cover some of those people, get them bail, so that you know, maybe they have a better position to try to fight a case and you know, not feel so overwhelmed by the system that they just give up and say, yeah, I did it. 70% of people in American jails have not yet been convicted of any crime. Yeah. So, and this is all an expense to taxpayers too, right? Those people sitting in jail are costing us money every single night that they're there.
Well, a lot of them are there because it's because they're unable to pay the bill of the administration, right? When they outsource small infractions like traffic violations and, you know, vehicles not being inspected, to these service providers who get people to do these plea deals where they sign up on a payment plan where they might be paying a $50 fine with $3,000 in administrative fees, and they get on a payment plan, and then they fall off the plan because their car got impounded or something and they can't go to work, and they end up in jail. It's like debtor's prison. We have modern day debtor's prison.
Right. It's a constant downward cycle. It's another example of a broken system that cryptocurrency is attempting to shift to a new way of doing things. So awesome. Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. That's definitely worthwhile. And so, I mean, that's an example of how, you know, mining Monero is potentially helping this system. But that same, you know, same option is potentially going to help Mark with open words and could be helpful in a lot of different ways. And just the idea that people can participate very easily, pretty low barrier to entry, is very significant.
So Mark's note on the chat says it's a fascinating attempt to use CPU for a social purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Let's see what else. Oh, I was just pulling up. Did I talk about this before? Democracy Earth?
No.
Do we see that? Oh, right. Well, so I've been watching this a little bit. They had some event down in New York, I believe, and it's live. It's recorded, and I watched a bunch of that, and I thought it was great. I posted a link up probably on Facebook. And it was a really good, I love the best quote from it was that, you know, looking at the volatility of Bitcoin, they said, this isn't the bubble, it's the pin. But this is basically what Democracy Earth is talking about, is that we have this current democracy, which is built on age-old technology, you know, primarily the printing press. And we have modern technology. We've had it for a while, and we need to catch up and use it, and really start to engage concepts like liquid democracy, owning your own data, and borderless governance, right? We don't need to keep defining our governance by geographic boundaries. So liquid democracy is a concept I've loved for a long time before I ever learned about cryptocurrency. Is the idea that you know, your vote can be represented as a token, and you can basically hand it to, you know, sort of drop it in the pot for an initiative that you believe in, drop it in the pot for a position that you think someone should fill, or drop it in the pot for someone else to have a heavier vote when they drop their coin in the pot for a particular decision. And all of these things can move in real time. They don't require, every 2 years or every 4 years to have a voting date or anything like that. It allows you to really jump in there.
Got to interrupt, Ryan. People aren't seeing your screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Hang on a second. Yeah, let me. Can you? Sorry. And there we go. Now you can see it.
No, I'm seeing your screen, but there you go. Okay.
There we go. All right. So this is Democracy Earth, the website. Democracy.earth is the website if anybody wanted to go check that out. But yeah, so the idea here is that they're trying to empower people through peer-to-peer networks and open source software to create liquid democracy and be in control of your own data.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool stuff. I definitely recommend spend a little time on that, and that concept in general is I think very important to how we can move forward and get better forms of consensus activated and make better decisions as a whole. Open source politics.
And speaking of that, you mentioned sort of geographically borderless governance, and I was reading about Estonia today, the country of Estonia, as you know, but I'm not sure our audience does. They have an e-citizenship program, so you can participate in Estonian government without living inside the borders of the country, because you can own land on the blockchain with their land registry. Their national healthcare system uses blockchain for your health records, and you can vote online. And they use a system of identity, which is it's PKI, encrypted certificates, or certificates for encryption, and with two-factor authentication. And then anyone using that identity that they've established can go participate in all these electronic processes. So we're coming along slowly. We got one country so far. It's kind of leading the way.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a startup in New Hampshire with a product called Grid Phone. I haven't read all the details on that, but it's supposed to be a blockchain based or focused phone to make it more streamlined. And it's exciting to see something like that happening so close to home here. But the idea of even cell phone technology, blockchain aside, I had this idea the other day. We should start a cell phone company, and every cell phone that somebody buys, we donate one, maybe not a matching one, but a cell phone, and drop ship it into one of these, someplace like Yemen, with the thing loaded up with survival software, how-to survival guides and how-to agricultural guides. Because that seems to be the biggest challenge everywhere in the world, is ultimately everything can be broken down to education being the biggest stopping point, and why we have people that can't fend for themselves, and yet sort of bullied around by the powers in their geographic location.
So speaking about that, I'd like to share another resource with people, which is about Andreas Antonopoulos. Right, he's written several books. He's appears on CNN and as a sort of a blockchain expert and pundit. He's heavily invested in the space. Was anyway, right? You need a little charity to bail him out.
Well, yeah. So actually, I don't think he's ever been like heavily invested. I think he is professionally vested in that he loves the idea of Bitcoin, but he's not necessarily like a big Bitcoin advocate. He's just an advocate of free, money that is not controlled by governments and central powers.
Sure. And he, so I stumbled upon a speech he gave. It was a small private gathering. Apparently, it was a group of lawyers in it's a 17-minute monologue, basically about what he calls the fourth use of money.
Yes.
So, he says,
Good
he takes questions from the audience or answers from the audience. Who can name the three, characteristics of that make a currency a currency? And it's, store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account. And then he says, method of control. What? Who said that? Method of control? And he goes off for 17 minutes about, Nixon and the Banking Secrecy Act in the 1970s and lack of due process in government's ability to seize your assets, and how, shutting down political dissent is so easy to do it at the bank.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And it's really quite a fascinating thing. So if you look for, Andreas Antonopoulos' video on, money as a form of control.
Yeah, in fact, I've subscribed to his YouTube channel, and he's just loaded with good ideas and really distills this stuff down. He's been thinking about it for a long time, and he just really breaks it down to money logic. It's not about the technical capabilities of the blockchain. It's really just, it works. It's been working for a while. It'll tweak and adjust, but it's doing what it's supposed to do. The real conversation is this money that the government's not in control of.
Yeah, and what he points out is that still over half of the planet is not banked.
Right.
It's not worth it, right, to serve them.
Right. Right.
And that's what keeps them from the inability to lend. I think we talked about this last week, now that I'm remembering. But inability to lend, inability to borrow, inability to have transactions at a distance really limits economic growth. I mean, if you read Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations.
Yep.
You realize what the importance of currency and banking and lending is in terms of growth of society. We might be in a totally different place in terms of the development of underdeveloped places in the world if we had done more to extend banking to them in the way that we've extended cell phones and other things to them. So it's amazing if this, it will be amazing if this democratization of currency and ability of people to transact without so much intermediation takes off. Save me here, Ryan.
No, yeah. Well, I was just gonna say we're about probably ready to wrap up here.
Yep.
I wanted to just go jump right back to the chat for a minute. If there's anybody that wants to pop up any sort of last minute questions or topics you want us to hit on here, I'd love to wrap it up with anything you're looking for. But we'll be off for the night, and we'll do this again next week. Tuesday or Thursday. We'll see how it works out. Probably Tuesday again, shoot for the same time, Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're still doing the live events here in person live in the co-work space, Wednesday evenings, 4:30. Well, actually, I'll have to check that for tomorrow. But 4:30, 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. And we are looking, I'm looking for sure to pop these up around the state too. I know that, Stephen, you and Roger have been doing the Breakfast Club, and maybe we can get that posted up as an event so that all the folks in the circle can see that. And anybody who wants to host some kind of a crypto Bitcoin meetup conversation, if you want one or all of us to try to attend there, let us know. I'd be happy to put you on as an event host and put up that event in your town so that you can maybe pick up some of your neighbors that maybe weren't paying attention and send some invites out and get some more people in the circle, because I think that together all across the state we can really accomplish something if we all engage in this conversation. So great. Well, I don't see any questions popping up. I see Liquid Democracy from Ben Brown. Thanks for joining us. Let's
Mark has a question.
Yeah, I just saw that. Product.
So I'll read it out loud. I'm curious about the issue of capital for service, product, or social enterprises versus capital for speculative and rent-based enterprises, and how crypto affects that issue.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because I was just reading today, not so much about capital, but about blockchain. impact on that. There was apparently a pilot project in Australia where a couple of the banks hooked up with a real estate management company, and they moved commercial leases to blockchain and smart contracts, and found out that they were way more efficient, more transparent, and had less errors, less fraud, and less attempts at fraud. But that doesn't really answer the question that Mark has.
Yeah,
maybe about over the weeks. Maybe it is.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think maybe Mark, we should chat more tomorrow and prepare for next week's conversation, because I think you raise an interesting point for sure. And I think it's one of those things that, you know, we can debate it, but the cool thing is that if you let these things grow and evolve, both forms, or both sort of, you know, or all of the examples, you know, all of the above will happen, and we'll get to observe what works better, and in real time, even dynamically tweak and adjust our systems and how we're using them. But it's an interesting conversation, and I think it would be worth potentially doing a little bit more homework on our part and see what examples might be out there to demonstrate the various you know, forms of, you know, capital for service, you know, speculative purposes and things like that.
Fundamentally, he's talking about working capital versus capital plant. You know, asset capital to spend on. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about that more next time around, for sure. Thank you very much, Mark. And if you want to drop some seeds tomorrow, feel free. Awesome. Hey, Stephen, it's been fun. Let's keep up the momentum here. Anybody that has questions after the fact, feel free to you know, comment below the video. We'll look for those. We are on Facebook under, well, we'll work on our our continuity here, but under Innovation Entrepreneurship on Facebook. We're under the Bitcoin and Crypto Club on Meetup, and Interchain Live is my blog, and we look forward to seeing you all in the future. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.